right, I just watched episode 4, 5, and 6 of Andor, season 2. I love these last few episodes. They had so much momentum, much more than the last three. Most of the plots felt integrated with each other just on theme. Like everything started to center around Gorman. And I really like that focus because it meant that when they cut back to different scenes, it kind of had this kind of flow and everything was kind of connected from a scene to scene perspective anyway. The connection between these 3 episode long arcs is much more tenuous. So they did a year later in between season 1 and the start of season 2, and now they've done another year between episode 3 and episode 4. It just makes me wonder, like, what was the point of the first 3 episodes? Because they are so disconnected from this plot now. I love these episodes so much from a momentum standpoint that they work kind of better as an opening to this show than the previous 3. The show should have started here. Everyone has a direction they're pointed toward. I even liked Luthen and his assistant Clea. Their little arc was awesome. I was excited for it as soon as they started about, like, oh, they're gonna have to sneak in. And basically, I love Luthen as a character, like, concept. The idea of this this basically antique dealer running a rebellion is just delightful. And I always want them to lean more into that because it's such a fun concept. But we finally found out how he knows so much stuff, and like what she's doing when she's listening to all these things is that they've placed listening devices everywhere, and like inside a bunch of the antiques that they distribute, which is genius. I love it. It's a great concept and a great reveal. And it's a great source of drama because the guy who's the father of the kid that Mon Mothra's daughter married, he is a collector of things, and that's been well established. And I guess one of his items in the collection turned out to be fake, and he's having the entire collection analyzed to make sure everything is legit. And that's a problem for Luthen, because although his stuff is legit, they've been putting they put a listening device in the one they gave him, and it will get caught. The reappraisal will find it. So during a party that guy is throwing, they have to sneak in and take the listening device out. And I was so excited for it because it gave off huge Ocean's 11 energy, just them talking about it. It turned out to be way simpler than that. She just kind of walked in that room and had the double agent with the ISB stand in front of her to do it, and it was a little disappointing, but it was fine. They also talk about the item itself that had the listening device was this very interesting book that's all through touch, because the aliens that made it believe sight is a disability, and all or very touch-based people. Very interesting lore. I love their lore drops. They love doing that, and I am always excited to hear the little tidbits they drop in. It's so much fun. I like that party a lot. Mon Mothra looked spectacular. I swear, I hope a lot of cosplayers are watching this show, because Mon Mothma deserves to be the next Padme when it comes to people imitating her costumes. She is every one of her costumes is iconic. Just absolutely stunning. And that one was no exception. And when she's at that party, it's freaking gorgeous. I love her at the party with her husband. Their marriage is not the best, but it is fun. That they had this car scene where it's clear that Perrin makes all the party arrangements, and she lets him figure out how they're going to get to all these important political party stuff. And I kind of liked that glimpse into how their marriage works. That was so much fun, her being there, and then a lot of people were there. And as I said, the double agent in the ISB was also there, which stressed him out. He did good stuff in this stretch of episodes too, because he found out that Daedra was assigned to Gorman and told Luthen, and Luthen sends Andor and then Vel and Sintra, and they are now aware that the Empire's interested in Gorman for some reason. And so they're kind of on it, but they don't know what's up yet. All they know right now is that they're building like some military base in the center of the city, and which is against the rules in place, but the Empire's doing it anyway, and everyone knows that they're doing it unspokenly, and the Gormans are getting frustrated, and then there's all this propaganda around the Gormans to make people like not be on their side. We know Daedra's plan because she told Krennic in a previous episode that she intends to get the rebels to make the worst possible decisions for the stability of the planet. So we now know she's doing it with Cyril, where Cyril's kind of giving them information and is kind of pushing them in a certain direction. The Gorman stuff is interesting because they finally found something for Cyril to do. They've been basically just kind of letting him meander through the plot for 10 episodes, most of season 1, and now he is like a spy for Daedra. I am so on board with that. That is a great fit for that character. It is exciting because there's so much riding on that for his emotion. Like, he's so desperate for approval and all this, and like, but there's also this other end where, like, what is he gonna do when he finds out what this is actually for? Like, there's this fun tension there. Even using his mom to get them to think that he's on their side. His mom keeps calling him now that he's like in charge of some division on Gorman, because Daedra put him there so that he could infiltrate the Gorman resistance, I guess. And his mom is pissed about it, and then she's constantly pestering him, and the rebels are listening in on his conversation with her, and he's intentionally dropping information to make them think that he's sympathetic. It's great. It's great. His stuff is great, and I love that sort of spy element and his backstory as a disgraced cop being used for him and making the rebels on Gorman think he is on their side. It's great. It's great. Love that stuff. Gorman is really fun and interesting. I think they went a little too hard on its influences. It's very, very French. I think they should have dialed that down 10%, just because its influences were so naked that it kind of took you out, where it's just like, it feels like, okay, this is the French planet. Now, Star Wars does that a lot, where it's like, this is the planet that this one thing. And last season, Aldhani was like Scottish Highlands, the planet. But here, I feel the costuming was just a touch too obvious. I mean, Star Wars has always been, World War II in space, but that was a little too much. Like, I mean, there's people wearing turtlenecks and berets, like all those rebels are in that meeting. It was just a little too much, and it took me out because it didn't feel like an alien planet. It just felt like, okay, we're just now doing a French resistance spy movie. Like, I still like it. I just feel like they went a touch too close to their inspiration there. It's fine. The language doesn't help because the Gorman language is aggressively French sounding. Like, it doesn't feel like an alien language. It feels like French, but not. Again, alien planet. I would have liked to have it been a little different, but it's fine. They also dropped this historical information about, like, Moff Tarkin had a massacre on Gorman. Like, he dropped his ship on, like, 50 people or something horrible like that. And there's, like, a monument to that horrible event, that the new military base that they're totally not building is already taller than, and there's, like, a shadow on it. That was interesting lore. I also love that Mon Mothra's scenes were integrated into that as well. Like, she's doing her own senator stuff, but it has this shade of being connected to Gorman because she's talking to, like, the Gorman senator, and she's concerned for Gorman, and so all of her stuff feel connected to that. I love that. The one thing I'm not happy it's connected to Gorman is Andor. And some of Andor's strongest scenes were in this stretch of episodes. Andor is at his best when he's interacting with a character he cares about. Like, his personality kind of comes a little bit alive, and he becomes more interesting as a character because he cares about the scene he's in and has like a person to focus on. So when he's with Bix and they're kind of having their banter and their relationship, he works a lot more, and they keep taking him from the people he cares about and puts him off with random people he doesn't care about. They keep doing this. They do this back in season 1. They did this with the Jungle Rebels, and now they're doing it with Gorman, where Luthen calls him to do an assessment on the Gorman rebels, and he goes there. And I swear the writers only did this so that they could give Andor those glasses, and because they thought it looked visually cool. Because I cannot think of another reason why they put Andor in that. Andor does nothing through that plot line, and he's there for like 2 episodes, but he goes there, he talks to the Gormans like twice, or maybe 3 times, and then decides, yeah, they're not ready to run a rebellion. I'm not gonna do it, and kind of backs out. And then Luthen is like it doesn't matter if Gorman crashes and burns. It will burn brightly, which was so intense. And him being horrified because, he doesn't want the people to just die for the cause. And then afterwards, Luthen sends Vel and Sintra, his other rebel agents, to Gorman to do his job. So what was the point of Andor going there? Like, Andor could have done that assessment from just Luthen giving him some information, be like, what do you think? And him giving his honest assessment, and then they get into that argument. You could still have that argument without him having to go all the way to Gorman, away from the plot that he's actually invested in, which is with Bix, and Bix getting over she's kind of getting a drug addiction from not being able to sleep and her nightmares and that's where his story is. But you throw him in Gorman where he doesn't care. He wanders around for a little bit and goes back, does nothing. The only thing that was for was to have tension with Luthen, so that he's away, so that Luthen can go to Bix, and then he finds out that he talked to Bix, and he feels betrayed and is starting to distrust Luthen and has arguments with Luthen. It's just to have tension with Luthen, but you can totally do that without him having to go to Gorman, because Luthen already ends up sending different agents to Gorman, and it makes more sense to send them because they actually do something once they're there. They arrange the stealing of a transport or something, but like they have a plot. He doesn't. Do not waste so much time. They wasted so much time with him there, and it just felt like an aesthetic choice. He's like, he has his glasses and he dressed really nice, and it will look great in the trailers. It looked great. He looked cool, sure. But I would have loved for that time that we spent him just doing nothing, for him to be with Bix, because at the end of episode 6, Bix sneaks into the doctor who tortured her's office and puts the torture device on him, and that's the end of that episode, and it was awesome. And I just wished that we got to see some of the buildup of that. That would have been so cool, because that arc is delightful. You're like, she's being tortured by this guy in her head, and she feels so helpless and frustrated, and she gets to take it out, and he helps her. That point of them working toward that is off screen, when that would have been awesome to see any of that build up, because we don't know how she got in there. We don't know how she did that, and it would have felt more earned for the audience to just kind of allow us to be on that ride a little bit, because it was so satisfying even as it is, but it could have been more satisfying. I would have loved more to linger more on that. seeing what they're doing with her here makes me even more unhappy with the assault in episode 3 because I think that muddies the waters. Her story is getting over that torture, and I feel like her being able to have a completely different moment of trauma but her dealing with that and killing that guy works against the character flow of that arc where, she got tortured back in that episode. That's the focus. That it's horrifying. She didn't get closure on that. And that helplessness could have been all that stronger if she doesn't have any outlet for that. She doesn't have to deal with that creepy guy or that and go straight to having nightmares about the torture. The assault in there is not the point of it. It feels like a blip that messes with the narrative flow of her character. Now seeing what they're doing with her, it makes even less sense why they did that. But I loved her getting vengeance at the end of that on him. It was great. It was very fun. That was where Andor should have been. It was in that story. Which he was, but they would have been better to linger on that instead of him going to Gorman. That's my opinion on that. Him and Bix, there was a lot of coloring their relationship because, they've gotten back together off screen. Would I have liked to have seen that? Yes, I would have. This show loves to skip over important things and then linger on things for way too long. I don't know. In any case, the scenes with Bix and Andor that are kind of them hiding out in some safe house and kind of almost domestic of them fixing the room and them going to this Star Wars grocery store, which I loved. I loved the little details in this show. This show does little details better than anyone. It's like it felt so good. So good. Oh my god. It's great. It's great. They have this running thing where Vix is kind of spiraling because of her torture, has bad dreams about it, and also off screen, Andor killed someone because the guard saw her face and he didn't want her to get in trouble, and she's feeling, guilty about that. That seems like an important event that they glossed over. These time skips are the more I think about it, the more I do not understand why we had to have 2 time skips. Like, what part of the first 3 episodes was necessary to tell this story? Besides the villain segments and the wedding? But the wedding didn't need to be before all of this goes down. The wedding could have been ongoing. Like, it didn't require narratively to be set before. So, what was the point of the farming planet except to explain how Andor's friend died? What was the point of the Yavin rebels and being on that jungle planet for 2 episodes? What was the point of stealing that ship? And then they do another time skip after those 3 episodes. And in that time skip, there feels like there's important things that happened. Why are they doing it like that? Like, none of that gels with the next segment of the story. It feels like if they literally started on episode 4 and didn't include anything from episode 3, the only thing that would have been confusing was, well, isn't this late girl having a wedding? That's it. That's how disjointed and irrelevant the first 3 episodes were. Very odd. And arguably, the wedding would have worked better running parallel to these scenes. You could have had references to Gorman Silk with the choosing of the wedding dress. You could have had this political tension brewing among guests at the wedding. You could have had Luthen and Clea do their whole heist at the wedding. Wait, that actually makes too much sense. It feels to me that the wedding used to be set later because there's a party in episode 6 that very well, I think, in earlier drafts of this script could have been the wedding because a lot of the same people are at it. And if you go back to the wedding, nothing besides the wedding happens. So I could totally see that in an older script of this show, the wedding was where Luthen and and his assistant have to go in and take out this listening device from this artifact or whatnot. The wedding doesn't have a plot going on. It feels weird having two separate parties where almost the same people are included, and one of them doesn't have like a driving momentum force, and the other one did, but one of them's way shorter. The party scene feels like how the wedding should have felt, like just when it comes to momentum and intensity. I don't know. I don't know. It was odd. It was odd. The pacing of that scene was solid. The pacing of robbing that transport, cutting away to the party and back again. Those were cutaways that worked because their tension was at a similar level. And so there was kind of this sense of momentum when you cut from and to and cut back and to. Was it perfect? No, but it worked. I know I've criticized this show in the past of kind of cutting to scenes that don't have the same level of intensity or emotional tone, so it feels jarring. Those worked, and I feel like they actually kind of helped each other build momentum, especially when it comes to the party, because the party, most of it just boiled down to uh, Luthen's assistant trying to take the listening device out, and it got stuck, and she's just kind of there. And to elongate that moment, they keep cutting away to the Gorman heist, and that kind of works. It goes on a little long, but it works, and I think helps that the momentum of that moment. During their little robbing the transport going to that big depot that they're building, Sintra gets shot, which means Vel's not. I don't think Vel's going to help them. So I suspect they're on their own because one of the rebels accidentally shot Sintra and she lost her mind and she gives this speech. It is unfortunate how underdeveloped Sintra is, that when she got shot, I was just kind of like, oh, so that's why they tried to make her a little more emotional in the scenes that preceded it, because before she was like a brick wall of emotion, and it's very hard. Like it's besides being a jaded and tough, competent rebel, there is kind of nothing else that we know about her. So it's hard. It's hard to feel much about her death. A similar thing with Andor's friend. The character isn't. We haven't gotten attached to the character enough to really feel the death. I wish they'd characterized her better. Whatever. At least Andor got more characterization. Andor with Bix were great scenes. I love that stuff. I loved Cyril like getting in with the Gorman rebellion and like kind of tricking them into it, and it's entertaining. And I love the Mon Mothma stuff. The pacing for these last couple episodes was really strong. Most of it felt focused, most of it felt connected. I mean, except Forrest Whitaker's parts, those were unconnected. I'm excited to find out what's going on there. They kind of cut that off early. I think the last scene for those segments was in episode 5, and then they didn't come back in episode 6, and you're like, what the hell happened? They introduced this kind of thing that gave off like Spice from Dune energy, and you're like, what is this thing that they're using? And then they cut away. If it's not going to be important in this stretch of episodes, I kind of wished they had moved it further along so that it would be kind of close to where it's going to be important. But I'm not going to talk about that section because we haven't really seen where it's leading, and I'll talk about it more when we know what's going on there. I'm looking forward to 7, 8, and 9. At least I think it's dropping in 3 episode chunks. If you want to be informed when I upload that video, do subscribe. Also, Bone Song, Diary of a Sentient Sword, my book, is available in the link below. The first 10 chapters are free. Happy reading. Take care.